Hello to all of you. This is Grammar 2 and I'm going to give you an example of syntactic analysis and the way that you have to do it. First of all, when analyzing a sentence, first delimit the components of a whole sentence. Then identify the subject and the predicate and the heads in each one. Identify any subordinate or dependent clauses that you have. This is an example of the syntactic analysis of sentences, and you will have to do it in all the TPs until the end of the semester. Please don't underline or highlight anything extra. When you have a sentence, you have to start off as I put here and in the following sentences. In the following sentence, you have to identify the whole sentence and say what type of sentence it is. For this, you are going to use square brackets. Then, in each of the parts, you are going to identify the subject and the predicate, and here you are going to use the ordinary brackets that you all know. The next part is identify the dependent and or subordinated clauses. And for this, we are going to use what is called in English curly brackets, and in Spanish they are called llaves. Next, you have to identify all the phrases and or clauses in the sentence and say what their function is. Here we have a sentence that is Richard knew that his father was on the way to Aquitaine to settle matters there. You have to identify the whole sentence and then identify the subject and the predicate. Highlight with gray, as I put it there, highlight the heads in both. The heads are always the most important word that you have in either a subject or a predicate. The predicate is always the verb. Then you have to identify the subordinate clauses and or the dependent clauses if there were. Here we have the sentence that has already been delimited. We have the square brackets at the beginning and at the end to say that that is the whole sentence. And it is a complex sentence. It is complex. Remember that you have different kinds of sentences, different types of sentences. And this one is complex because it has a subordinate clause in it, and it also has a dependent clause. So, the main clause that we have here is Richard knew that his father was on the way to Aquitaine. Richard is the subject, it is the noun phrase as a head. And knew is the verb phrase, which in this sentence is the head. The subject then is Richard, and it is the noun phrase as head. And the predicate is all the rest. Knew that his father was on the way to Aquitaine to settle matters there. The head is knew, which is the verb. In this sentence, you have a subordinate noun clause which is functioning as a direct object. That his father was on the way to Aquitaine. What did Richard know? He knew that his father was on the way to Aquitaine. So that then is a subordinate noun clause as a direct object. That here is the subordinator. His father is the noun phrase, which would be the subject of this subordinated clause. Was the verb, and on the way to Aquitaine is a prepositional phrase which is functioning as an adverbial of place. Then we have the dependent non-finite clause, which is to settle matters there is a non-finite to infinitive. Remember that the non-finites are ing, to infinitives, and the ed participles. And here we have to settle matters there is a non-finite to infinitive as an adverbial of purpose. To settle would be the non-finite to infinitive as adverbial of purpose. Matters would be the noun phrase as a direct object. What was he going to settle? And there would be the adverb of place. Now we have a sentence which is a bit more complicated because here we have two sentences and they also have different components. And you have, Wendy arrived and unlocked the door. Although the cabin was deserted, she looked carefully into each dark corner of the rooms. That Marianne hadn't done the job was obvious. Now we have Wendy, then you have all the components of the sentence, and you have a compound complex sentence because it is joined by semicolons, which is a compound sentence, and it also has a subordinate clause which makes it complex. So Wendy would be the subject of all this sentence. Arrived and unlocked the door would be the head, the verb phrase, which is the head of the first clause. Then you have, when the subject there then is Wendy, noun phrase as head, and the predicate is arrived and unlocked the door, and there you have a coordinated verb phrase as head. The door here would be the direct object. The other independent clause that you have, which is joined by semicolons, is, although the cabin was deserted, she looked carefully into each dark corner of the rooms. And here we have a subordinate adverb clause of concession, and you have although the cabin was deserted. Although is the subordinator, the cabin is the subject, was is a linking verb, and deserted is an adjective phrase functioning as a subject predicative. Then you have the rest of the independent clause or the other independent clause, and you have she looked carefully into each dark corner of the rooms. The subject here is she, the predicate is all the rest, look carefully into each dark corner of the rooms. Looked would be the verb, carefully is an adverb of manner, and into each dark corner of the rooms is a prepositional phrase as an adverbial. Remember that it is not necessary to analyze each of the words in all the clauses, in all the phrases. And then you have the rest of the sentence, or the new sentence. That Marianne hadn't done the job was obvious. And this one is also a complex sentence because at the beginning, as a subject, you have a subordinated noun clause. So you have that Marianne hadn't done the job was obvious is the whole sentence. That Marianne hadn't done the job is the independent clause, and the subject is a subordinate noun clause. And you have that as the subordinator, Marianne as the subject, hadn't done is the verb phrase, the job is the direct object, and the predicate is was obvious, it begins with the verb, was is a linking verb, and obvious is the adjective phrase as subject predicative. Okay, that is all of that kind of analysis that you have to do. And then you will find analyzing components that are underlined. And here you have to say what the underlined phrases or clauses are and what function they have in the following sentence. And here you have your sentence. Though it is classed with the carnivores, the grizzly bear is largely vegetarian and seldom eats flesh. And here we have, though it is classed with the carnivores, is a subordinate adverb clause of concession. The grizzly bear is a noun phrase as subject. Is a linking verb. Largely vegetarian is an adjective phrase which is functioning as a subject predicative. Seldom is an adverb of frequency, and flesh is a noun phrase as a direct object. Okay, up to here this is all about syntactic analysis. I hope it is clear. I hope you understood it, and if you didn't or if you have any problems, please write to me and I'll try and help you, or I'll try and solve your problems. Okay, that is all for now. Goodbye and have a lovely weekend.